human beings are born with the ability to deep squat. You see that in babies all the way up to infants, and then even in a lot of indigenous tribes you'll just kind of see them eating like this, sitting around like this. It's just a natural human ability, but over time we lose it because society nowadays, we have so many comforts and our body has this amazing ability to adapt. We then sit like this constantly, and our body doesn't need to have this stretched out mobility to sit in a full deep squat. So over time, you round over, we're constantly typing, we're looking at our phone, and our body adapts to that. Now luckily, this amazing ability applies both ways, so it doesn't take a ton of time to simply regain the ability to sit into this deep squat, to regain natural human movement. And I've lost that myself. I was working at a desk job for 3 or 4 years, and it completely reshaped my body. I was super stiff. I wasn't able to get into this position, for example, without pain. But there are many things that come into effect with it. And still, I don't have the ability to do this full squat without my heels coming up. So my ankle mobility hasn't fully regained its natural ability. And simply, it just takes a lot more time to lengthen out the ankles. That's then why in all of my squats you pretty much see me using heel elevation. I'm going to show you everything you need to get back into a full deep depth squat, regain your mobility, and simply get out of pain in a lot of areas, because this is something that we do in our everyday lives. We climb down here to pick things up or play with our kids or play with the dogs even. You want to be able to do all these things pain-free. You don't want to be in pain and things that happen in everyday life, and then if you're in the gym, much less in the gym, you want to be able to enjoy that time that you're focusing on bettering yourself. The ankles is very helpful to have this. Not only will it allow you to come full depth in your squat with better posture, it also allow you to push the knees out further, and then over time also progressively strengthens them more as well. You'll see here it's a lot easier to be able to do that, whereas if I do it without it, having a balance here on my heels. There's camps that go back and forth on what's better. I prefer the stacks because these allow you to really kind of mess around with your stance, right? Some people like a wider stance, a shorter stance, and that's really all going to depend on your physiology, your anatomy. It's better to find a stance that you enjoy, that you can do, that you find is best for you, and use that. Other people prefer the slant board, and this slant board, as you'll notice, has a lot more heel elevation. I actually prefer these for back squats. For front squats, I like this better, because in front squats, you're holding weight up here, you'll notice that the ankles come up even more, so it's nicer to have that extra angle. And then in addition to that, when you're doing front squats, you want to emphasize the quads anyways, right? So this allows you to emphasize them even more. But these are all just tools, and you can actually just take a plate at the gym, and that works just as well for heel elevation, right? Maybe 2 plates in the case of one like this. But you don't need to buy these things. These are just very useful tools that make the workouts even easier. These workouts that help remodel your body. For your ankles, it's actually very simple. Just taking something, again, like I said, you can use a plate to elevate the front of your feet, and stretching. Having your feet next to each other is going to give you a good bit of stretch already, but once you're ready to progress, you can then move in front of them, keeping this leg completely straight. And that's really working on that ankle mobility. And then over time, you can work there. You can also lengthen your hamstrings here from this position. That's one thing. We'll start from the ground up, working on the ankles, getting them more mobile. This one is going to take the longest, but it's definitely worth pursuing, being able to squat without having the heels comes up. That's like the journey that I'm on right now. But again, we're just starting from the ground up. The next thing, and these are the common things these are all going to be the common things that keep people from being able to squat ass to grass pain-free, right? If you want to have a personalized program, I'm happy to jump on a call and help you with that. I'll even do that for free. And then if you're interested in working with me, we can further discuss getting onto a full personalized program. Everybody's going to have different needs. Not everybody's tight in the same areas, but these are the 5 areas that most people are tight in. We've already discussed the ankles. Then coming up, it's going to be your hip flexors. A lot of people, your hip flexors in older people, you see sometimes they get tight, and this is from us. Again, our body adapting to us sitting all the time, our hip flexors get tight, and it keeps a lot of people from walking straight because they simply cannot extend the hip fully because those hip flexors are then just keeping them from doing so. The ATG split squat, which is basically a squat on one leg. Front leg is the squat, the back leg you're getting a full hip flexor stretch. It's one of the best things to do to lengthen out these hip flexors, because you're also strengthening them in this position, in a lengthened position, and that makes them more injury resilient as well as stretching them. Here you're also reshaping the body, you're stretching the ankle, you are putting pressure on the knee, you're strengthening your knee in a fully stretched position, you're lengthening the quads, the hip flexors, and then you're also stretching the groin. That's going to be another one that we're going to touch up on. Right now we're working on the hip flexors, again stretching those, getting them longer, but also stronger in that lengthened position goes a long way. And to regress this exercise, you can simply find somewhere where you can elevate the front foot, and most people actually have to start at about a foot elevation because the hip flexors are so tight. Usually I recommend finding a bench or something like this, and then that way you can get full perfect form here. You'll notice you won't be able to get perfect form starting on flat ground, but using that front foot elevation allows you to then progress into that. You're stretching a little by little, more and more, until you can do this, right, without dropping this back leg or bringing the back forward. So perfect form is going to be being able to do this with the back leg off the ground, which is done by squeezing the back glute, and then with the back completely straight, which is also related to this hip flexor. So if your hip flexor is too tight, you'll have to do this to even get into this position. That's why we elevate here and allow your back to fully extend here. And then as you keep this back straight, it's going to really tug on this back hip flexor. In the front leg, you'll know if it's just simply too much weight on the knee or on the front leg, because you won't be able to get full calf over hamstring coverage, right? If you're like here, it's just simply not, your quads are too tight. A lot of people will notice your quads will be too tight for this. That's three things right there: your hip flexor, your groin, it's oftentimes too tight, and then your quads being too tight. The biggest problems that I usually see in people not able to get into a squat. For me, that was the biggest thing, was the hip flexor. I'll put my first rep that I ever did on an ATG split squat, I could not keep my back straight as much as I tried, even with the front foot elevated, because my hip flexors were so tight. If our hip flexors are too tight, then when you're squatting, your posture is going to be terrible because they're keeping you here, as opposed to when they're flexible, you can have that freedom of movement to where you can actually keep your back straighter in this position, in this full deep squat. And again, the split squat is literally the same position of a deep squat, but on one leg. You're training that position, you're training your ability to keep your back straight here from a fully stretched position in the back. So that really effective at stretching out the hip flexors. And you see literally the same position, but with two legs. And your groin, you saw the ATG split squat. Now this next exercise is a loaded exercise, not only for your groin, but also lengthening out your hamstrings and strengthening your lower back. Big thing in the squat, if you're trying to improve your squat posture, a lot of people tend to squat like this with their knees behind the legs. And this position is just more of a posterior chain position. Not necessarily anything wrong with that, but if you want to improve your squat mobility, you're probably trying to target the quads more. So to keep the back straight here, you have to have a strong lower back, otherwise you end up like this, right? You don't want to end up folded like this. It's not a good position. This exercise literally, it's called a seating in the morning, literally working only on the position of the back, so hip extension here, and it's stretching out the groin. As you'll see here, it's actually safest to start this with dumbbells. So put this up with dumbbells. It's a lot safer because you can simply drop the weight that's in front of you. So you're going to set up at the edge of the bench. You're going to bring your heels in front of your knees like this, with enough room for your belly to pass through. Dumbbells here in the middle, keeping the back completely extended, so having the chest forward and then coming down, controlling the weight down, keeping the chest forward to where somebody should be able to read the logo that's on your shirt if you have a logo in front of your shirt. Big breath here, and you're going to see this is like stretching out your groin at the bottom, your adductors, and then come back up. So by the time that this is going to stretch you out one rep at a time, right? And then lengthening out the tissue in our groin, and then also strengthening the back. So I'm gonna drop them real quick so I can show you here. This area is where we're stretching here, the groin, the adductors, the muscles that bring in your legs and then that bring them out. we're lengthening them, but also strengthening them in this position. Come in here, you're gonna use this as well as your lower back to then come back up. Coming all the way down and back up. Once you can get to about 50 to 60 pounds in this position, then it becomes safer and easier to use a bar. You can literally see how this, which is the part of the squat that's using your back, and this, which is a squat on one leg put together, is the exact same thing as this, right? Because then you're extending the back and then you're using the legs coming up, right? Triple extension at the ankle, at the knee, at the hip. We're putting knee extension, long range knee extension. Long range just means joint dominant, emphasizing the quads, and then you're putting hip extension, long range hip extension, because we're coming as close as possible to the from the thigh, as close as possible from the lower back to the thigh here as you can. Even if you're in the worst position of a squat, if you're doing it with the amount of weight that you can do that, you're safe, right? Because then you can get out of it. Obviously, you don't want to end in this position when you're squatting. You want to end up here. That's why we're here working this squat mobility. Those are the two most bang for your buck exercises. But then we're going to go to a third one, which is it's called a VMO squat. Vastus medialis oblique is what is named after VMO squat. It's a teardrop shaped muscle here, and a lot of people say, it's very controversial to say that you can even target this muscle, but we're not really trying to target. We're trying to target all four quads, right? We're trying to strengthen all of these, because when our knee is completely flexed, these muscles are responsible for keeping the patella in track, specifically the VMO, and it's easier to target it when you put your knee over your toe. So in the squat, that focuses on putting your knee over your toe, keeping the hip extended to keep the back completely straight. That's why it's called a VMO squat. We're trying to target exactly those muscles that protect our knees. This squat is basically, and you can start just body weight, putting your arms in front, and then coming down. So keeping our knees over our elbows here. And eventually you can start loading it. And it actually gets even easier if you assist yourself between two chairs, right? For example. So as you come down into this bottom position, you're putting more and more pressure on your knees. You can even assist yourself with two chairs at your side to get started, right? If this brings you pain, you can even start here just to simply improve your mobility. And then as your knees get stronger and as your mobility gets better, you can then start doing a body weight, keeping your back completely straight. Again, mobility has a lot to do with this ability to simply keep the back straight in this position and get your ankles to your butt. Then you start pushing the knees out in front of you, and that's directly training the quads. Again, being able to control your own body weight here for 20 reps is a huge improvement. And then then you can start to add weight. So you can start with some dumbbells here in this position, coming down, coming back up. And you'll know if it's too much weight because you won't be able to keep your elbows above your knees. Your elbows will be between your knees or simply touching right here. That just means that your knees aren't able to handle this load yet. But it's all something that we have to work towards. And being able to progress this without pain is crucial, because then you improve faster. I know it's kind of counterintuitive, but just pushing through pain is not going to get you anywhere as quickly as it will if you dial it back to a level you can do. So come in here, this is our marker for telling us if we're doing this with the appropriate amount of weight. Again, too much is this way, or this, just right is here. Coming up, keeping the back completely straight, pushing through. That's called the VMO squat, and it's one of the best things you can do for your squat mobility. And again, you can keep progressing it by adding more weight here, and you can then continue to progress it by loading it with a barbell. Now, barbell loading is something completely optional, and I can certainly make another video for how you would improve your ability to do this, because this is more upper body, elbow and shoulder mobility, but then you can start loading even heavier with a barbell. Those are the most bang for your buck. All of these are loaded stretches. Even an actual squat is a loaded stretch because you're putting weight on your tissues as you're stretching them here, right? As opposed to avoiding putting any stretch on those tissues by sitting down in this comfortable position. Nothing wrong with sitting. It's amazing, especially for productivity. But again, our body can adapt to this, or it can adapt to that. And mixing both in is very helpful. Now, a fourth thing you can do that's huge for improving squat mobility is simply finding somewhere where you can keep the ankles on the ground. So it's going to be kind of a wider squat. You're going to come down in here and sitting a deep squat. Now this, of course, I wouldn't recommend doing this until you can do the other three without pain, because then you'll be able to do this without pain. Putting your hands like this together and then pushing out of the inside of your knees with the elbows. This is a big one for improving your groin mobility. It's going to give you a big stretch right there. And just trying to sit here for up to, start with a minute and then slowly build up to 5 to 10 minutes just down here. It's a really good meditative practice. But again, if you don't have time for these, the other ones are excellent to get you started. And I'm going to show you 3 more stretches that you can do, maybe 4, to improve your squat mobility. This one's huge here. Just simply sitting in a deep squat, moving around, really stretching the groin area. And then you're also stretching those quads while you're down here. And again, these are just tools. This is another one you can use once you feel good and well in the split squat. On a very elevated surface, you can then start using lower surfaces. So here, using lower surfaces, and then as you get stronger and more mobile, you still want to continue challenging this back leg, then you lower it even more whatever elevation you can do with perfect form is the best. And remember, if you can't do it on the ground here with perfect form, so if you can't do it like this, keeping your back straight, keeping this back leg off the ground, if you're doing this, it's better to simply elevate. You can even add load when you have the front foot elevated. You feel like it's not challenging you enough, and some people might actually even need that load to be brought down into a deeper stretch. You can even add load here to this position, even if you're not ready for flat ground. You can start adding weight to help you stretch better. Just loaded stretching, right? And if your ankle's bothering you, and I know I'm showing you so many variations of the split squat because it really is the most important one for stretching out those hip flexors, giving you better squat mobility, and stretching out your groin. If your ankle is bothering you because of that heel, because it comes up at the bottom, you can then use heel elevation like this to stretch and it actually helps you push the knee over the toe even more, but it gives you more stability here and keeps your ankle from being in pain from that big stretch. That's another tool you can use, that heel elevation on a front foot elevated split squat. Another amazing stretch that we can use to improve our squat mobility is the pigeon stretch. Not only does it stretch out your groin, it also stretches out and strengthens your piriformis muscle. Piriformis is a muscle it's a really thin muscle that goes right under the glute, the hip extensors, and then connects to the knee. And it's a muscle that's oftentimes ignored, but it's huge for people that have sciatica nerve pain, because it's right next to the sciatic nerve, and oftentimes if it's tight, it presses onto it, so it causes that sciatica nerve pain. But it's also big for squat mobility, because simply having flexible glutes and stronger glutes is huge for squatting, for squat mobility, right? Takes away that butt wink whenever we have a more flexible piriformis muscle. Not only here are we stretching our groin, again, we're also stretching the piriformis, and it's going to be really hard for most people to do this stretch on flat ground. Having a bench makes it a lot easier, right? Because then we can incline and reduce the difficulty on this. Just trying to get your head to your foot is the goal, but we can start here, simply elevating. You can even start it at 45. Some people even start at 60-degree angle. You're going to put your foot in the crevice here. You can help yourself with your hands, and you want to keep the heel completely in line with the knee for the deepest stretch. And then you can slowly start trying to make your way down, head to the foot again, getting a big stretch right here in the groin and piriformis area. Stretching your glutes or groin, getting more flexible for the squat, and you can see how this goes straight into a squat because you're almost here in a squat, right? But getting that extra flexibility. And once you get to the point where you're comfortable there, you can then come lower. And you don't necessarily have to do these pulses where you're trying to get your head to your foot. You can actually just hold the position here. And this is isometric hold. It gets you stronger in the piriformis, gets you stronger in the groin area. I would say 3 sets of 12, maybe 20 if you're doing the pulses, and 3 sets of 30-second holds each leg if you're doing the holds. And then again, just so you can see here, we're simply trying to keep that heel completely in line with the foot. And this gets even harder if you want to add load. Say I can hold a weight right here. If you need to get deeper into that stretch, you can do that by simply holding a dumbbell in your hand. This is another excellent stretch. The goal again is to get to where you can do it on a flat bench or on a flat ground, and then slowly but surely get that head to your foot, right, as you get more flexible. Now I would not rushing it on this one. Oh, looks like it's starting to rain. So I got I got 2 more. You have your couch stretch as well. Couch stretch is amazing for improving your mobility. You can use this on a bench or on a couch. So I'm going to show you how you would do it on both. Right, a bench is easier makes it easier because you can increase or reduce the inclination. Let's pretend this is your house couch. You would then put a cushion here for your knee. Put your foot up here, and then we're trying to lean back. Now this is stretching our quad, and it's stretching our hip flexor because our stretch is tugging down, and then because we're keeping the hip extended here, it's tugging up. So it creates a stretch effect on the hip flexor, and then of course the quads here. You see they're in a stretch position. Just trying to get our back to our butt as close as possible. Using a pole here is very helpful to kind of push back. So even if you have a broomstick at home or simply have somebody help you push back. This one's huge also for the squat mobility. As you can see, directly translates to the mobility of the split squat and being able to put this to completely fill out the hamstring over the calf. And yeah, so the couch stretch is huge because it's gotten so many people out of back pain. And again, you can even use a bench or a wall. And the wall makes it harder because then you're stretching out your ankle as well, right? So you see here, this is actually a little bit harder for me to get my shoulders to the wall or to the bench. But the bench makes it easier because then you can reduce that inclination. And anybody can get started right here, trying to get that glutes to the butt, shoulders to the bench, and then even easier, right? So those are the most bang for your buck stretches. I'm going to show you one last one that's really going to open up your groin, and it's probably the easiest one you can do because all you need is a wall. It's called a groin stretch. You literally just let gravity do the work. You get your butt as close to the wall as you can possibly get, and then you're going to simply come up here, legs straight, and then slowly let gravity do the work, bringing the legs down. And most people, when I started, I was like right here, didn't have very flexible groin at all, and then eventually now I'm about here, trying to still pull down a little bit on this. You're going to feel big tension in your groin area. But this is a great way to get those adductors to open up and improve your mobility. Easy one. Hold this 3 sets of 1 minute. You can put all the stretches together after doing the main meat of the 3 courses of ATG split squat, seated good morning, and the VMO squats. The first 3 I showed you. The other ones are just stretches. That's a whole workout right there. Do that 3 times a week and your squat mobility will go through the roof. And when I first started training all this, I was maybe able to squat to about here. Just didn't have the mobility. My knees even hurt. This all strengthened my knees, got my mobility to the point where I can just squat at will, right? And I feel very comfortable in this position, and now I'm doing squat every day. But thank you for watching. If I was helpful, you can just write me back. Let me know anything else any other way I can help. Again, I think I'm one of the perfect people to talk about this because I went from not being able to squat at all to now, anytime I want, getting really flexible. My mentor, he learned this from Charles Poliquin, one of the most medaled U.S. Olympic coaches. He coached the most people to Olympic medals in history. It's a big accolade of his. He's known as the greatest personal trainer of all time. I didn't get to learn from him, but my mentor did. Knees over toes guy, Ben Patrick. He's saving millions of knees around the world. At this point, he's changing the whole fitness industry for the purpose of improving people's longevity as opposed to what it was doing before. The co-founder, Keegan Smith and Ben Clarfield, those are my mentors, and they've all completely taken Charles Poliquin's teachings that were able to help freak athletes win gold medals because they applied it to themselves first. Ben, for example, was somebody who had 3 knee surgeries because of his pursuit of love for basketball. The conventional route had him getting on painkillers and going through a very hard time, and he found Poliquin's methods, and he was able to then apply it to somebody who was broken himself and able to find ways of regressing these methods to where anybody can do them. And now he's having amazing success applying those exact methods, the regressions of them, the ways to make them easier to then have success for people to improve their ability and get out of pain. And then also just be able to having access to natural human movements like the squat. It's been amazingly helpful for me, for my clients, both in person and the people that I've been helping online. If you have any other questions, reach out. I'm always happy to do these. Thank you.